All right. Good evening. The time is 7:11 and we are returning to open session. And I want to welcome everyone who's here this evening. And as a reminder for those of you who were smartly not here when we opened our meeting 41 minutes ago, this meeting is being recorded, being broadcast on ActonTV's website and on their YouTube channel. So welcome to everybody who's joining us now. A couple items I want to say at the beginning of the meeting for people who will not be with us at the end. Project Graduation is still looking for volunteers. Please reach out to the Project Graduation team to volunteer for that very special event for our seniors. Secondly, while she's not here, we did just get to say a very big thank you to Beth Petter, who will be retiring as our school committee secretary this year. And I did want to say openly in a public meeting how grateful the entire committee is for Beth's dedication and support of the committee over these years. And then, yes, thank you. And then lastly, a congratulations to Liz Folks, who won re-election to her seat in Boxborough. It was a tough battle.
Yeah, I beat blank.
You beat the blanks, good job. All right, with that, we will move directly into public participation. So, per our policy, members are invited to speak for up to 3 minutes. Speakers must be recognized by the chair before speaking, and typically the committee does not respond to the public. Anybody from the public here wish to speak, please?
Thanks. Yep. Hi, I'm Leah Lally, a K-1 teacher at Miriam. At the last school committee meeting, it was shared that the district is receiving additional funds from the state, and I'm here to request that you consider using a very small percentage of that to continue funding reading assistants in each building and give back some additional hours to classroom assistants. All of the positions that have been cut are extremely vital to the education of our students, but reading assistants and classroom assistants give you the most bang for your buck. We know that students who receive early intervention in reading and math have improved academic outcomes, so I'd like to highlight some of the many benefits of early intervention. It reduces the number of students requiring long-term special education services. Early success in math and reading builds self-esteem, and students are more likely to stay engaged and motivated in school. It's more efficient and less costly than remediation later in a student's academic career. Early intervention helps to close achievement gaps linked to socioeconomic status, language barriers, and learning disabilities. If we don't add back reading assistants to each school and additional assistant hours, the number of students who will be able to access early intervention in the elementary schools will be drastically reduced. With the many cuts over the last few years, our MTSS model is nowhere near what we want it to be or what our students need it to be. Having a classroom assistant that knows the students and can support in the classroom is one of the necessary components we need so that teachers can provide MTSS during our flex blocks. If Miriam had not had a reading assistant this year, more than half of the students who currently receive reading support wouldn't have. Many of these students performed well below their peers at the beginning of the year, but by the end of the year, we've seen significant growth and improvement. I urge you to please fund these positions so that students that need these supports can continue to grow and thrive at AB. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Please.
Hello. My name is April Sears, and I am a reading assistant at McCarthy Town. I am speaking to you this evening in support and advocacy for the 4 reading assistant positions that have been eliminated from next year's budget. I would like to respectfully ask if there is any way that some of the additional funds approved by the House could be used to restore these positions for the 2025-2026 school year. The reading assistant positions are an integral part of the reading intervention program here at AB and are necessary for helping struggling students develop into fluent, confident, successful readers. In my role as a reading assistant, I provide direct reading services to half the McCarthy Town intervention caseload. While this role has the title of assistant, I am not a typical assistant. The reading assistants at AB are teachers. We provide direct, targeted, systematic, explicit instruction in the areas of fluency, phonemic awareness, phonics, comprehension, and vocabulary within the framework of a multi-tiered system of support. We work with students who have trouble decoding, blending, and encoding, as well as with students who have trouble with automaticity, fluency, accuracy, and comprehension. The loss of 4 reading assistants means that many of these students will not be able to receive the intervention and support they need, putting them at great risk. My typical caseload is 22 to 25 students divided among 7 groups, K to 6, but I have worked with more students than that this year as groups are flexible and change based on student data and student need. I'm sincerely worried about what will happen to these students without the availability of a reading assistant. Reading specialists cannot absorb these students into their schedules, as they have the same number of students, if not more. That's 22 to 25 students from just one school that will not be able to receive the reading intervention they need. Multiply this by 4, and about 100 of our neediest students across the district are losing access to important, targeted, explicit, need-based instruction. This is devastating. I also help progress monitor students and administer DIBELS to all of our students in grades K to 3. Both are necessary tools for gauging the performance and success of our readers. We've been doing DIBELS for the last 2 weeks at McCarthy Town. It takes that long to collect the data. Every student in grade K to 3 is read with. Every student in grade K to 3 has their needs assessed. Eliminating the reading assistant means there will be one less person available to do this sweep, which will make it take longer to collect the data to see who is at risk and who needs support. I've been working at AB for the last 8 years and have seen firsthand that reading intervention really works. It is so satisfying to see the growth that students have made from the beginning of the year to now, especially when students that were in danger approach and/or meet the benchmark. I love this job with all my heart. In closing, I respectfully ask that you please consider using some of the additional funding that was approved by the House to restore the 4 eliminated reading assistant positions to the 2025-2026 budget. I think it would cost about $80,000 or so to do so, which is a fraction of the total school budget. But it's money well spent, especially when you consider the large number of students who will benefit from having us there. Our struggling readers deserve to have their critical needs met. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. For the folks watching at home, my name is Mike Balulescu. I'm an Acton resident, RJ Gray parent, and president of our district's teachers union. At your May 8th meeting, the superintendent shared good news about additional expected revenue in the state budget, including more Chapter 70 aid, more circuit breaker funding, and more regional transportation reimbursement. All of these increases will help our district. And as you know, these changes to state funding did not happen by accident. When this committee asked teachers to write to their elected representatives and tell their stories about the needs in our schools, we responded. I understand that the challenge of the calendar means that this additional revenue is hard to incorporate into the FY26 budget, since our assessment to the towns has already been decided and the budget already finalized. Nevertheless, now that the state has done its part and made a good faith effort to respond to the needs of our students and our staff, it's time for you to do your part and find a way to make these dollars count next year. It's not good enough to tell our educators that the revenue they've helped us win will be used to shore up E&D. That's not what teachers are worried about. That's not what keeps them up at night. You need to find a way to use the funding we've pleaded for to make a difference for staff next year. I know that you can't restore every position we need to do our work, but you can pick 1 or 2 positions. You can restore something that will have a positive impact on kids come September. For me, you're not going to find a better value than adding back hours for our elementary classroom assistants. I haven't talked to an educator yet who hasn't told me how important classroom assistants are to meeting the myriad needs of our elementary learners. If not classroom assistants, then what about elementary reading assistants or other staff critical to our Tier 2 instruction across the district? What about the Faculty Support Center at the high school, or additional staffing at Blanchard, where the schedule is so full that our overworked teachers don't even get a daily prep period? My ask tonight, my plea tonight, is that you find a way to make our funding wins count. We have dire needs all across the district, and we've done nothing but cut staff for 4 years running. We asked the state for help, and they've delivered. Now your educators need to see a win. Your students need to see a win. Find something to bring back into the budget and remind teachers that when they speak, the school committee is listening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, good evening. I'm David Martin, Acton Select Board Liaison to the School Committee. Last month, school committee members began discussing the requirements for the FY27 budgets. I approached some members of the school committee with my concerns that their approach would not engender the hearts and minds of Acton voters. Those members expressed confidence in their approach and did not seem receptive to my concerns. The school assessment presentation at Acton's town meeting doubled down on this approach, so I'm bringing my concerns here to the whole school committee. School committee members that I spoke with were taking the position that the school district must receive the funding that it requests, whether it means that the Acton municipal budget must suffer or Acton must have another override. Then during town meeting, the school assessment presenter said, "We cannot continue cutting school services while the rest of town services remain stable." Is that really the standard? That the school district must be increasingly funded to the point of instability in municipal government? Let's go over the facts. For a decade, the AB school district assessment to Acton has increased at 5% a year on average, 5.5% including excluded debt. During that same period, the municipal increase was 3% per year, or 3.4% including excluded debt. The school district increases average 2% more each year than the Acton government. During the same time period, the school district's share of all expenditures in Acton went from 61 to 64%, while the share for Acton's municipal government went down from 38 to 34%. School committee members know that the budget drivers like health insurance and pension increases are the same for the town and the schools. That the town has also had reductions each year from level services. That the town budget absorbed double-digit increases to the Minuteman assessment over the past decade. That as part of an ALG understanding, the town postponed projects last year so as to smooth the impact of the override for Acton taxpayers. And maybe the town will need to make accommodations to lessen the impact on schools next year. So it's obvious that any implication that Acton is not willing to make accommodations to support our schools is misleading. Even further, school committee members told me that they would oppose the Acton DPW building unless the school district was assured of funding that they requested, despite the fact that with a debt exclusion, a DPW building is not directly competitive with school funding. The implication was that the DPW building would be blocked until the school funding requests were satisfied. I care very much about our educational staff, but I care equally about Acton's public works staff. It's hard to handle the implications that Acton's DPW workers would continue to work in unsafe and unhealthy conditions. I want to emphasize that I'm not the only one to hear it this way. A resident contacted me after the final ALG meeting to say that it was obvious to them that the school committee will block the DPW building unless they get what they want. When I was first elected to the select board, I asked to be liaison to the school committee because I care deeply about our schools. I attend the vast majority of school committee meetings in person, so I'm well aware of the challenges. I've worked long and hard every year to support and pass the school budget, especially during the override year. I've always advocated for we're all in this together as an approach to figuring out the financial challenges that we face. However, this new approach from some on the school committee smacks as us versus them. The district's assessment presentation at Acton's town meeting also said that we need a new plan. I agree with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public? All right. Thank you. Peter, superintendent update.
All right, so first I want to offer some congratulations. Blanchard Brass Wind Ensemble just earned a gold medal at Massachusetts Instrumental and Choral Conductors Association. This is now the solo and ensemble festival, so it's a slightly different festival. It's a more small group oriented, so congratulations to that group. And I also want to congratulate one of our high school students, Ram Sivaraman, who I believe you've met. But he actually just had a recent achievement at the International Science and Engineering Fair held in Columbus, Ohio. Ram placed first in the Systems Software category and was awarded a $6,000 prize from Microsoft, so that is huge. Ram's project is titled HM Detect, Murmur Detection and Classification Methodology using a novel C2 LSTM architecture and multimodal signal, which Adam has agreed to describe to everyone. No, in all seriousness, absolutely incredible project. I actually have gotten to see Ram present really impressive stuff. So, I think what I want to note is that work doesn't happen without a lot of educators running behind them and supporting that work. So, congratulations to all of the Blanchard staff in the music department, as well as all of our music staff district-wide for supporting our students there, and congratulations to all of Ram's educators as well for being able to support his growth and development over time. Budget and finance update. Just as we thanked Acton residents for supporting the school budget, we also want to thank Boxborough residents for passing our budget at last Tuesday's town meeting. It feels like about 6 weeks ago at this point, but it was only last week. As you heard during public comment, we are looking at additional revenue that the House passed. So we have been trying to get a handle on that because the House and Senate versions of the budget differ at this point and have not been reconciled yet. Unfortunately, that doesn't traditionally happen until usually into July is when they finally set the budget. So I would expect we're probably on that timeline. However, the fact that both the House and Senate have signaled $150 per student in Chapter 70 aid, I think is a very strong signal that we can count on that aid. Regional transportation is a little murkier. We're not really sure where that's going to end because one of the versions of the budget was significantly lower than the other and would not really yield much in revenue for us. So that does require some watching. As well, circuit breaker reimbursement, we don't really know what that's going to look like for next year fully yet. So some uncertainty, but we are zeroing in. I think the Chapter 70 piece is a reasonable place that the school committee could look. So our administrative team has actually started work on a proposal that we anticipate coming to you on a budget amendment for your next school committee meeting that would have two parts. The first part is to reduce the assessment to the two towns to free up money on the two town side of the budgets. And that was something that you had agreed to in February when you increased your budget, that the first pocket of Chapter 70 money that came in would backfill that amount to the tune of about $150,000 to be split along the assessment formula. And then similarly, what we want to do is take some of that remaining money and come to you with a budget amendment proposal for your consideration of adding back some reasonable number of staff. So that is in the works. We will bring that to your next meeting, but I just wanted to give you a heads up that that was coming. Also, and really in exciting news, part of working with the Department of Elementary Education is a public school monitoring process that they have. And so we have now submitted our artifacts as part of DESE's public school monitoring process. The process takes place every 3 years with an alternating set of standards being reviewed each cycle. This cycle includes a review of universal standards that address the areas of licensure and professional development for educators, parent-student community engagement, facilities and classroom observations, oversight, time and learning, and equal access. So we have submitted the artifacts, we've completed the self-assessment stage to the process, and we anticipate that DESE will be visiting us next year in the spring. So more to come on that when they get here, and we'll keep you updated. Some really cool, exciting news. Parker Damon Building actually started a dog therapy program. I know you're hearing from the elementary principals. Thank you to the two principals, Christina and Christy, for bringing that program in. That follows one of your policies around therapy dogs. So you have a policy that allows for that, and that started. So really cool. It's amazing to see the students. We'll be sending out some photos in the update tomorrow to families, but just amazing reaction by the kids to having the therapy dog in school, so we're excited about that. And we are sending out, one of the most exciting things we get to do every year is send families information about the last day of school. So we will be sending that out in the update as well. That is scheduled for June 20th. Keep in mind, June 19th is a federal holiday, it's Juneteenth. So we are not in school that date, so we have, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of the week, we have Thursday off, and then we come back for Friday. So we'll be sending that information out to families.
Any questions or comments from Peter? All right, thank you, Peter. We are going to move on to our guests and presentations. Tonight we have a motley crew, a wonderful looking group of administrators from our elementary school. So I'd like to welcome you all up to give us the elementary school update.
We'll have 2 mics on each end.
Where are you going? That was a pause. Thank you.
It's been a long day. Unless you want to speak to the high school.
Yeah.
people.
Presentation would be nice, yes. So we're just going to start on this end and work our way down. Allison Warren, principal of Gates Elementary.
Christina Gavin, principal of Miriam.
Larry Walpe, principal of Douglas Elementary.
Michael Votto, principal at Blanchard.
Christine Yellen, principal at McCarthy Town.
And Tricia O'Reilly, principal of Conant School.
Allison goes first. I feel like I have a loud enough voice, but if we can click. The clicker didn't make it. Okay. All right, we will get this together. Our shared goals, we're here to basically talk to you a bit, highlights about this year, but we all have shared goals that are wrapped around the MTSS, our culture responsive practices, and social emotional learning. These goals also support the strategic plan, but we are just going to highlight a few things that we're proud of, and it's going to look different in each of the schools, but all of it is these 3 goals is the foundation of the work that we do.
So first and foremost for Blanchard, I'm going to talk about our implementation of year 2 with EL on our language arts curriculum. Our teachers have done a great job of implementing 3 modules this year across 1 through 6, in grades 1 through 6, with a strong level of engagement with the complex texts, our nonfiction topics, and evidence-based writing. I've had more parents comment this year on what their kids are coming home talking about and learning about in EL. And then piggybacking on that with MTSS, we've done a great job. We've continued to do a very good job of expanding our data-driven reading and more math support this year across Tier 2 and Tier 3 support for students across K to 6.
All this technology. I'm really excited to talk a little bit about Second Step, which is the SEL program that we implemented across all the elementary schools this year. We are on track to fully implement the entire program in all 7 grades, kindergarten through 6th grade. That included the bullying units that were one of the driving forces of us embracing this curriculum. The bullying units were all completed before the end of 2024, and the rest of the year we continued with the program. We don't have right now a lot of subjective, or rather objective, evidence of what the program has shown us, but I can tell you that every one of us and every assistant principal can tell you many anecdotal pieces of evidence of how it really has improved the relationships between our students, their ability to reflect, their ability to see outside of themselves, and this is straight from K through 6th grade. It's had a really positive impact on our community, and one of the things we're actually really excited about is starting next school year, knowing that all the students have had 1 year of foundational work with Second Step. We have had teachers tell stories where they'll go through the bullying unit, and there are students who say things like, oh, when I was doing that to my friend, that was bullying, and I need to pull back on that a little bit. So it's really enriched the conversations in the classroom. The teachers have really embraced it, and we're really excited to continue it. And then the other thing I just wanted to highlight at Conant this year is, as we also continue to sort of broaden and deepen and refine our MTSS process, is something we tried that is not perfect, but we implemented professional learning communities, which essentially means that during the school day, grade level teams get to meet to talk specifically about kids. This includes times where we have data team meetings, but it's in addition to the data team meetings, and the agenda includes 1 week perhaps speaking with the school psychologist, 1 week speaking with the English language development teacher, 1 week speaking with the math coach, or 1 week speaking with the literacy coach. And all of those people obviously bring different expertise to the grade level teams that can support then kids specifically. So again, first year, a little bumpy sometimes, but overall, the staff has really received it well. And certainly the folks who get to visit and work with grade level teams are really appreciative of the time that they're able to do that. So we're excited to continue that as well.
Thanks. So I also have chosen to talk a little bit about Second Step and its really successful implementation this year, not only with the the bullying prevention units, but also just really the use of language that happens each and every day. You can hear that the students have learned and figured out how to use it and are using it very successfully when you're having conversations, when you're having restorative conversations with kids. You often hear them use the language. Also, the implementation of the DESA screener, so that's a social emotional screener that we do on all students. That's actually happening across all 6 elementary schools. So we do it right now, the beginning of the year, and then we're just wrapping up sort of the end of the year, and you see growth within different discrete social emotional skills. So that's been great. And from what I understand, next year we're going to add a winter benchmark in there as well. And then finally, a bit more Douglas specific. We've had SOAR values of showing perseverance, offering compassion, acting responsibly, and respecting each other, ourselves, and property, but they hadn't really been operationalized, and we hadn't really done much with them. So this year we implemented a recognition system, and it's important that students know these are not rules, these are values, and when we see them exercising the values, they get a feather. And there's not a trinket at the end of the rainbow, it's just knowing that you did the right thing and that you were doing the very best you can. And then finally, culturally responsive work. We've done a lot, not only with our staff, but with our families as well, and figuring out how to operationalize welcoming those students and those families who get here. It's really easy to do it in August, but it's a whole lot harder to do it in January. So we've now finally come to a point, and it's nice that sort of the district is doing some of this work through the multilingual department, and sort of piggybacking on some of the things that we're doing. But, you come to Douglas Elementary School, you're going to get a tour from an administrator once you're enrolled. You're going to meet your teacher. You're going to be walked through how to use Parent Square and all the things that we kind of take for granted that you're not going to know. So in addition to that, we've actually now taken some of those newcomer families, people who came in January just a couple of weeks ago, we interviewed them and said, hey, what is it that you wish you knew that you don't know as a result of the onboarding process? And they've said, hey, here's X, Y, and Z, so some work for next year.
So at Gates, one of the things that we really, that we focused on this year, and this has been probably the biggest piece of what we've been looking, is defining our purpose, our vision, and our values. And that's been started at the beginning of the year, and I feel like it's just starting to land the plane. It's been a real event making sure that we have student voice being included in this piece. We've had staff voice. All a professional day was devoted to this when we were looking at our values, along with families. We had a committee that we brought together to help us wordsmith, but also looking at what is the true purpose, what is the missions, and then the values. The most interesting story that came out of that is 3 values came up for the staff and the families, and when they came out, it was the exact same thing, which is kindness, respect, and inclusivity. It was the exact same for both sets, and we've spent some time this year doing some art to represent those values, which is going to be at our art show. If anyone's looking, Gates Art Show is coming up soon, but we are going to reveal what kindness and respect and inclusivity look like on art panels. Every single staff and student did it, and we're going to put it on the wall, so that'll be an exciting thing to share. The other piece that we have continued to focus on is responsive classroom and how that creates the environment with which everything that we do, how implementing the Second Step program, the EL curriculum, our IM, everything that we do all starts from developing the routines and relationships within a classroom. So responsive classroom continues to be an area of focus. We focused in our all-school meetings, we were talking about relationships and ways to embed that, as well as through our unified arts, art, music, PE, and library. How can we be intentional in talking about relationships? And quiet time was one of the routines that is part of responsive classroom that we really pushed big, and having it appear in all the classrooms. And that could be after recess, lunch, and for some classrooms, it's been supportive to have it after unified arts as well. Thank you. At McCarthy Town, we're going to just discuss social emotional learning and multi-tiered systems of support. In both of these goals at McCarthy Town, there was a lot of staff leadership around them, so I just want to thank the teachers and our mental health team for leading a lot of this work. As far as social emotional learning, we refined our response to behavior matrix. This matrix has been a work in progress for a couple of years, and this year, after some professional learning with one of our counselors from our Compass program around trauma-informed practices, we learned a lot about how our own nervous systems as adults impact how we're interacting with students who may be dysregulated. And for all 484 students, they'll have moments where they're dysregulated. And the grown-ups learned about how their own nervous system could impact the students when we're responding. We then took that work and added a belief statement to our response to behavior matrix, so that we were working and thinking about what are the adult mindsets that go into the work of responding to behaviors. And we came out with Ellie Lyons' leadership, our counselor's leadership, thinking about behaviors in 3 buckets of mental health needs, lagging skill needs, or a behavioral need, and trying to have our teachers kind of think through those 3 lenses as we respond to behaviors was a really helpful piece of work to add to our response to behavior matrix. And in multi-tiered systems of support, our focus was Tier 1 instruction. And again, like many of us have set up here, building out the consistency of those practices in both language arts and math. At McCarthy Town, we really noticed, and Tricia said something about this with Second Step, we noticed that as the years go by where we're using consistent programs, the vertical alignment is really supporting student learning and student mastery of skills, because what they learned the year before is coming into that next year and is really giving them the confidence in those skills. And again, I would just give a lot of thanks and praise to the amount of work that the teachers have to put in to do all of this change.
At Miriam this year, we have spent a considerable focus, and we have centered our goals on inclusion and belonging. And we have noticed that our students are telling us that for the majority of our students, they're having a positive experience, and there's a small group of students and students who are not having an equitable experience, and we wanted to do something with that. So we've worked with a equity coach. We've partnered with Michelle Shannon, and we formed a group called Elevate this year, and it's comprised of families and staff. And we've been working together all year, and it's been an extension of our efforts to deepen our awareness, understanding, and our skills to interrupt hate and bias. And through that team and through that work, it's been very powerful because we have brought our families and staff together, and they're coming to meet after school hours, after work hours. It's a volunteer committee. And through that work, we have decided we really want to amplify the student voice. And so we're at the stage of getting to better understand the student experiences, their perspectives, and through what they're telling us, we want to take that and we want to shape the values and shape our next steps. And we have also spent a considerable effort around the professional learning for staff. We are working with all of our staff, including our paraprofessionals and our assistants, in order to better equip us to be well practiced. We want to respond to these events when they happen, but we also, more importantly, want to create a culture where these events are less likely to happen. And ultimately, we want students to feel that school is safe, that they feel seen and heard and known and understood, that they can be themselves, and that school is a joyful place to do their best learning. And another focus that we've had at Miriam has been on positive behaviors. And Second Step has also been a huge success at Miriam. The students are using the vocabulary, and we are anticipating that as the years go through, that cumulative knowledge and vocabulary will continue to inform students and strengthens relationships. And we've also continued to deepen our work with responsive classroom and restorative justice. And MTSS has also been a focus at Miriam as we continue to extend our practices with academic, behavioral, and social emotional tiered supports.
As you can hear in this presentation and probably in last year's and hopefully next year's, we really are trying to hit the balance between having a shared vision with the district goals and the school goals, but also being able to meet the context of our individual schools. We plan to continue doing that process next year around a goal of strengthening and refining Tier 1 instruction in literacy, math, and social emotional learning, and also support the strategic visioning and the restructuring of schools work that we will all be doing together. We're happy to answer any questions.
Excellent. Thank you all so much. Questions from the committee? I'll go with Ben, and then it looks like Tori's ready to ask a question.
So earlier, or not earlier on, but just momentarily ago, you mentioned that the Elevate group, in terms of discussing about meeting after school and helping amplify student voices. What sort of topics are being What? Oh, I'm sorry. Here. Can you hear me better now? Yes. Okay. Could you speak more about the Elevate program and speak towards what you're actually discussing in terms of amplifying student voices? What sort of topics are being raised and shared? And what kind of impact has it had in terms of the involvement so far?
Thank you for the question. Elevate is a symbolic. I met with the equity coach and we started brainstorming, visioning, and what do we want to call the name of this group? And we could have called it so many different things, and it really is a group focused to look through an equity lens, an anti-racist lens. We want to focus on inclusion and belonging, most certainly. And we could include those in the title. So we thought about it, and we started talking about, well, what did we want to vision and what did we want to see? And we really wanted to lift up the morale of the building for the students. We wanted to lift up student voices. We wanted to be doing a little bit better than we were before. We know we're not going to be able to solve racism with this one group or solve all incidents of hate and bias, but we thought, could we do a little better than we were before? Could we go a little higher? And that was kind of the spirit or the symbolism of it. And through that, trying to surface the student voice, because we did get a little bit of what students were telling us, and some of what they told us is, this is only the half of it. You don't even know some things. We're not reporting everything. So that kind of told us we need to create the conditions of safety for kids. And so how do we do that? And so it has been exciting because we're bringing together parents and staff together. It's been highly collaborative. And I am so grateful that people come every single time because we're tired, we all work, we all have so many things on our plates. And when I come to the meeting and I look at the people around the room and I know, oh wow, we're all here on a volunteer basis because we care about these topics and these issues and we care about the kids in front of us. That energy is so contagious, and we learn about the brain, we learn about what happens when we go into that fight or flight or freeze. We learn about child development, and we also talk about, developmentally appropriate ways to handle it when kids mess up. We all mess up. And then we're right now in the process of we've surveyed every single student in developmentally different ways, because sixth graders are going to need something different than a kindergartner. And we've defined the problem, and we're asking kids, why do you think this is happening? And what do you think we need to do about it? And getting their input. And so we're at the stage right now of we're going to look at that together. We've surveyed every student, and we're going to dream big for some next steps.
Great. Thank you so much for that very important work.
Tori?
I love getting to hear more about how MTSS is evolving, and something that I feel like I heard a number of times that I'm curious about when we were working through the elementary budget task force was I heard a lot of people saying we're on the right track, but it could be better. We're not implementing it as intended. So I'm curious about what you would like to see that would make it stronger.
Want me to go?
I didn't know if you're handing it to me or if you're...
Well, you reached as I reached. I think some of the comments from the public this evening talked about MTSS is really an idea that an entire school is wrapped around looking at data together in order to meet the needs of individual students. And we have the kind of seeds going where we're working on the tier 1 and strengthening that. We have tier 2 happening for some students with specialists and with classroom teachers and with our coaches, and we have tier 3 happening. I think the pieces that could be happening more is if we had more of that staff, and as time goes by and we grow teacher capacity to understand different ways to do small groups. But really that staff piece is, I think, what we heard a lot in that elementary budget task force that was focused on, obviously, the more staff we have, the deeper the work we can do, and the more widespread the work is.
I'm going to add just real quick, Trish, you too. I think that it's also just looking at the tiers, so tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3, and thinking of MTSS, and it's their social emotional component, the academic component. MTSS covers, it's a huge framework that we're working from. And all of us are in different places, and just this year we were meeting with Heather Stouch, our SEL director here, and we're looking at how do we define our tier supports within SEL, and really starting to operationalize and think about what does that look like within the schools. So I feel like there's so many, you start to peel the onion and then you keep peeling the onion, and I think we're going to be peeling the onion for a very long time.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with everything and support everything that's been said. I think that our kids change every year, and we have to be responsive to our students. So even if we were to ever arrive at the perfect MTSS model, we'd get a whole new group of kids, and we'd have to look at it all over again. But I think specifically one of the things that I would, and we've all talked about next year really focusing on Tier 1, is really getting our coaches in front of our teachers with as much time as possible, because that is where the professional learning happens. I'd love to think that as a principal, I can help everybody with Tier 1 instruction in my school, and I can't. But certainly our coaches are in the position to do that, and our coaches are in the position to bring teachers together to learn from each other. And so I think that's something we're thinking about. How can we use that better? I mean, we always want time and money. That's an obvious ask. However, I think thinking about what we have and how we can use it better, and that's one place that we're thinking about.
I think you can keep the mic right in front of you. Regarding MTSS, my understanding is that I have an elementary school student as well. Like, I hear a lot of assessments going on. There's a lot of data collection. And I think it's very interesting because when, the principals came to policy sub and we started getting a peek of your day, what does it look like? I'm kind of curious, because data collection and analysis takes a lot of time. I'm just kind of curious, what is the impact of a teacher's day? What does it look like? When do they squeeze that in?
That's a great question, in that I would love to talk about it forever, but I'll try to summarize in 2 minutes. I won't. So there's assessment going on from the minute a child walks in the door, right? It's formative assessment. A kid who's typically very cheerful and happy today isn't. So that's an assessment a teacher notices and maybe puts it in the back of her head or maybe approaches the child. We also have formal assessments. We have end-of-unit tests. We also have benchmark assessments where we're taking a look universally at all the students in the grade across the district, and are they meeting certain benchmarks that are related to our standards. And then we have our formative assessments that teachers might do at the end of a lesson or a couple times a week to see where students are in new learning. So all of that is happening all the time. So in terms of I'm guessing your question is more about the more formal kinds of assessments and that kind of analysis.
I was just curious, how do they pack in, trying to teach the students, getting to know them, being there for them, and do all that?
Yeah, it sounds pretty full, doesn't it?
Yes,
does. It is. It's amazing what teachers do. I wish we could put a little pro cam on every teacher for one day, honestly. I don't think people would believe it. However, we also try to have systems to support teachers, right? So we just finished something, we call it something different in all our buildings. We've called it a sweep, a swarm, a flood. We've had but that's where we kind of get all hands on deck, and we have a schedule, and we say, okay, we're going to spend 10 days on this, and we're all going in to assess together. The principal, the assistant principal, the coaches, the interventionists, the classroom teachers, anybody who knows how to use the assessment, and they're fairly easy to use, will go in and get this done. So we are trying to share that, and in terms of the analysis, our coaches do a lot of the pre-analysis or initial analysis, and then our data team meetings are the places where we're doing the analysis together, both as classroom teachers, interventionists, administrators. And I think that's a pretty standard practice in all 6 of our buildings. Was that helpful? Okay, thanks.
Leela?
Thank you all. I appreciate the commitment to our schools, but also public education, a time when I think our schools are expected to pick up so much from and with students and families. On kind of a personal note, I have a request and then I have a question after. My request is that I went to the STEAM and Literacy evening at one of our elementary schools recently, and it was super helpful to see families so engaged and to see the relationships that staff very clearly have with students. And so my request is invitations where appropriate to the school committee. Sometimes as someone who doesn't have kids, it feels a little awkward to walk in without students, because I'm just like, hi, I'm a random adult walking into a school building. So an invitation could be helpful. My question, so I'm on policy subcommittee, and as we keep talking about kind of integrating restorative justice into policies, later we're going to see it in the high school handbook. In a perfect world, we would all want the people implementing the policies that we write or the handbooks to have the tools to feel like they're doing it in a way that feels comfortable for them. And so my question, recognizing that there are fiscal constraints around that given our budget, is what professional learning or kind of formalized opportunities have there been for you all or for staff to do some PL around restorative practices, and or what is in the pipeline to come, if anything?
So we actually started the year as an administrative team. By that I mean everybody in central office and the building-based leadership doing a very full 2-day restorative justice training. And we've all taken it back to our school sort of in bits and pieces. I know for a fact some of my colleagues spent half or the entire November professional learning day with their staffs doing restorative circles, teaching them along the way. I know we actually had some work. We did sort of an unconference style of learning where teachers sort of get to choose their own adventure based on what they said they'd like some learning in. We had one teacher who actually had been trained in restorative justice. She led a whole workshop on it. And I think it's also, it's not just the training, but it's consistently doing it, right? So when you have a conflict, a peer conflict between two children, how are you addressing it? Are you using the restorative questions? What happened? Why? How did it make you feel? Tell me more. And I think the more that we're doing that, there's learning not only going on for the children, but the adults as well.
Yeah, I think the 2-day training for the whole staff was really quite inspiring to all of us, and I think we've, given the constraints of the budget and time, have approached it differently. I know at Conant, I have taken 10 minutes of every staff meeting just to do a little snippet of restorative practices, either a video or a list of values or a list of questions, just to sort of keep it on people's minds. We also had, I think other people here have taken Tier 2 individually, so some of us are Tier 1 and Tier 2 trained. I think a number of us have had our assistant principals trained this year. I know I offered to a handful of my classroom teachers that if they were interested in being trained either over the summer or in the fall, and many of them are. I think a great place to start is with our mental health staff, with our school psychologists and our school counselors, but also there are classroom teachers who are probably pretty much doing a lot of this and just didn't know that that's what it was called and would love to learn more about refining it. So it would be fantastic if we each had $30,000 to train our whole staff on one day, but we know that's not going to happen. But I think we're all pretty committed to making it work, sort of jigsawing it. Yeah.
Glenn.
Hi, everyone. I wrote down lots of thoughts, so I'll do my best to not be too rambly here. But one thing that's on my mind is that 10-year-olds today were in lockdown 5 years ago during kindergarten. And I think that definitely has some, my guess is that as people on the ground in this, you probably see some effects that probably took years to really come to say oh, that's what that does. So I was hoping that you could offer a bit more discussion about what are some of the unique challenges that maybe let's take 6th graders, for example, or 5th graders. How is the classroom different with these kids than it was just 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago? One thing I'm wondering is that if you've mentioned that there's anecdotal evidence for how SEL learning has really help these kids. I'm wondering, is there things that besides anecdotal evidence and this will probably come out later, but like, can you point to like, hey, there are less outbursts now, for example, if there are some kids that are having behavioral issues, maybe those things are getting better. And do I have any other notes here? Those are the big ones. That's kind of open-ended, but if you have any thoughts, I'd be happy to hear them.
Good question, and I think one that we often have in the forefront of our minds, and the further we get away from it, the less it is brought up, but really it's still having a huge impact, so thank you for that question. As Trish talked about, we all are using second steps, so that gives us kind of a foundation. We also have our mental health team, led by Heather Stauk, has done the work to write our own district-based can-do statements for each grade level that are a way for teachers to start looking at what is the kind of typical developmental social emotional learning skills that kids can do, and using that as a baseline to then be able to say how many of our kids aren't there yet and how many of our kids are doing more than that right now. Just anecdotally, we also at McCarthy Town use Chip Wood's book Yardsticks a lot, and I'm sure other schools do as well. We often hand it to parents. And he did a lot of research before the pandemic around the developmental milestones for social emotional learning and academic learning. And what we've been doing after the pandemic is, if we want to think about fourth graders, there's literally a chapter that's like 9-year-olds. We tend to read the 8-year-old chapter, the 9-year-old chapter, and the 10-year-old chapter instead of just that middle place, because we're seeing some of those differences. And almost always when we're in these problem-solving conversations and then we read that chapter, we're like, oh, they're just a little bit of a lag here. We need to read that 8-year-old chapter and apply it to what we're seeing in the next grade. So we do some of that work in our problem-solving conversations.
I also just think at the ground level, I think our teachers and our staff in our buildings are extremely adept at being flexible and seeing what's in front of them and adapting on a daily basis, sometimes minute to minute, day to day, hour to hour on what's happening in front of them, because the amounts of dysregulation haven't gone away. They definitely dissipated a little bit here and there, but our teachers just have to be on their feet and on their toes, and they've become like masters of every craft, not just like their ELA craft or their math craft, but they've become masters in SEL as well right now because of what has happened over the last 5 years, to your point.
Thank you. I just have a quick closing comment. I love hearing about the fact that we're rolling out Second Step as a sort of a district-wide SEL. And what I'm really excited to see is how that gives our elementary students tools as they advance into the secondary level. And, you know, we talk a lot about advisory at the junior high and high school, and I'm really excited to see how the work that you do now with Second Step sort of helps evolve those programs as our kids move up. So thank you. It's really exciting, and thank you all for coming to present to us this evening. All right, we are going to move on to our new business. So we're going to take 6 principals and replace them with one amazing principal who's going to share with us a riveting topic. Anyone's welcome to keep Joni company. All right, so we have a first read update to our student handbook. So we do have to vote our student handbook, and it's typical for us, our practice is to see policies or handbooks once, have an opportunity to ask some questions, send some feedback, and then this will come back to us at our next meeting, because obviously we need to have the handbook in place for our seniors as they're coming in. So with that, I'll hand it over to Principal Dean.
Great. So I'm excited to talk about the handbook. I also want to congratulate our over 400 seniors who are at the end of their journey. Last night we had our scholarship night, and the community generously supported over $155,000 for our graduating seniors. It was a wonderful celebration of their accomplishments. Next Friday is their last day, so we have 5 or 6 days left with the seniors, and then we will clap them out. We will all line the sidewalks that you see there as they leave the building, and that will be our second annual clap out, and then graduation is on June 6th on Leary Field. So we're very excited to celebrate the class of 2025. And now on to handbook. Okay, so if you take a look at these slides and click on all the links, which I'm not going to do here, but we're in your memo, you will see our handbook from last year, and then a link to our new proposed handbook, a memo that highlights all the changes, and I'm going to show you an overview of what those are tonight as well. When you look at the proposed handbook, there's some notes about text. What we're proposing to change, which is actually quite a lot due to some reorganization, is red and struck through, and then the blue text is what we're proposing to be new. And here are our changes that we would like to propose. So the first bucket is in our graduation requirements, which you all know about. We have an additional arts elective, which you approved for the class of 2029 and beyond, so that is now in there. We have some program of studies alignment language, which you also looked at and approved, I believe, in March, and then our new competency determination now that the MCAS requirement is gone. So that is all reflected now in the handbook. The second bucket is our open gradebook language. So we are going to be opening the gradebook for the entire school year next year, starting at the beginning of the year. And so you'll see language around that, and that Power School will be open for students and families, and that's explained in that section, page 15. Cell phone policy, we're enhancing our cell phone policy, which we also added to last year. You'll find that on page 67. We want to ensure that the instructional time in classes is really phone-free, and we're going to ask that students put their phones in the cubbies that are in all the rooms. Some students already do this, and some teachers have students doing this. I think we want to provide assurances that the classroom is phone-free, distraction-free, and that there is really engaged learning going on in the classrooms. And, you know, with all the research that we see in best practices that we know, what our teachers know, what area schools have done, we do believe that this will be helpful in the classroom to keep the phones out of, let's say, temptation for students, maybe in pockets or near their desks. Of course, if a teacher wants the students to use them, that's fine. They'll be right there in the classroom with them. And I would say that teachers overwhelmingly are in favor of doing this for instructional time. I will say that cell phones will still be allowed, as they always have been for the past many years, maybe ever since we had the advent of cell phones, during free periods, during lunch, in libraries, in common spaces, in cafeterias. So feedback we've heard from teachers has been overwhelmingly positive. From students and families, very happy about distraction-free classroom time and the possibility of more engagement. There were some concerns around being able to use phones in an emergency, and students will still be able to use their phones in an emergency. They'll be right there in the classroom. Questions around, would this provide or create more stress for students, not having their phone right on them, but still in the classroom? And I think evidence and research that we have seen shows the opposite in terms of what teachers and we all see in terms of the pull of cell phones and the effect on students' health and their stress. And so we really feel that stress will be alleviated by not being pulled to stressful, possibly conversations or using cell phone electronically. The third concern was around possibly cell phones being lost or not being able to find them. And that we feel like we can mitigate and has not been a problem for when they've been used in the past. Students misplace things several times a day in the high school, and it's pretty easy to find it, and everyone is very helpful in doing that. And so we feel that that won't be an issue, and once the habit of using the cubby comes into place, that would work out just fine. And then the fourth bucket is reorganization and clerical updates. And so when you see a lot of red in there and a lot of blue, we reorganized the entire table of contents. We eliminated some sections because they were completely redundant and found in other areas. And so that is it.
All right, thank you. Looks like we have a very eager question over there from Vikram.
Yeah, it's more a logistical question, and regarding the cell phones and keeping them in cubbies, could you elaborate on, is it sort of like there's a bucket, everybody throws their phone in there, or is there sort of like, is there a designated cubby with their names on them, pictures, or?
So almost all rooms in the high school already have these. So if you walk into a room next year, you'll see it. They look like like hanging shoe racks, right? And so there's about 25 different spots, 30 different spots, and a student would just put theirs in there. Many of them do this in several cases, and then when they walk out of the classroom, take it out.
I also want to say that regarding stress, I think there'll be initial uptick of stress, like, where's my phone?
Yeah.
But as they roll into it, it'll be much better, as you said.
And a lot of things in life happen that way, right? And that is actually a good strategy for resilience and coping.
Ben?
So I know the Massachusetts Senate, along with other lawmakers, are exploring a cell phone ban within our schools. How would this help or potentially hurt you as an administrator in terms of ensuring that the high school and all of our schools are phone-free?
Well, that's $1 million question. I wouldn't say I would be totally opposed, or that the staff in the high school would be totally opposed to a complete ban. I think we also, as educators and human beings, want to teach our children and ourselves how to use technology responsibly. And so I think there is a tension between being able to do that and then completely eliminating cell phones completely. I am more and more convinced over time, and with the advent of COVID, unfortunately, that technology, especially for younger brains, has a real addictive pull. And so if you ask me today, I would probably say we would comply, and there would be a lot of positives, and that would be okay if Massachusetts did that. And at the same time, I think we would need to figure out ways to also teach our students how to use technology responsibly. Are you asking how it would couple with the cubby policy? Because it would just take over, and then we wouldn't have cubbies because we wouldn't have phones.
Right. My question would be, essentially, you just mentioned that there is cell phone allowance periods, if you want to call it that, during free time.
Yeah.
So, yes,
Yeah.
I know, I need to be closer. Sorry, Anjan. How would this impact? Obviously, it would eliminate cell phones altogether in the schools.
Yeah, so then we wouldn't be able to allow that. And we'd have to follow the state guidance and laws on that and figure that out. Peter?
I'll just add, one thing I did share with the state in some feedback was another unfunded mandate that we're going to be monitoring. And, the districts that have gone entirely cell phone free has spent considerable money on yonder pouches, things like that, that can lock devices. But that means every time a student comes into the building, someone has to be giving them a pouch. They have to lock it for the day. They have to have a way to demagnetize it, not only at the end of the day to access their device, but then they also have to demagnetize it in emergencies and things like that. And so, like, the mental health side of cell phones, there's no doubt in my mind that it's problematic for kids. And I also, at this point have seen so many mandates come out of the state of new things that schools are required to do or monitor or execute that don't come with it the infrastructure and support. I think, over the last couple of years, I think I gave it out at Budget Saturday last year, right? All of the administrative mandates that have taken place over the last 15 to 20 years, they're all well-intended and all require something else of educators and administrators in schools. And so I, certainly would support something that moves this forward, and we need help with it too, is what I would say.
Thanks, Jenny. I have a quick question and then maybe a longer one. My quick question, I could just keep talking and not frame it like that, was the tier 2 door propping stood out to me, and then I had to Google it. In the, like, what infraction is it and what tier of, like a behavioral response?
Oh, yeah.
And so I just didn't know what the heck door propping is, and so I Googled it. And I just want to double check that, are we referring to like where students are leaving external doors that are supposed to be like latched open? Okay.
Like propping a door open with a door stop.
Yeah. And is that happening like, maybe this is a separate question.
It happened at the beginning of the year when we had our new door policy. It doesn't happen anymore.
Okay.
We have alarms that go off when the doors are open, so we know right away. And we followed up with those students, so it's actually not happening very much at all.
Okay. And then maybe the longer question is, I think, to be candid, like the lens that I'm looking at this through is primarily like vision of a graduate, just because that has been on my mind today. And this idea that like we're setting students up for like wherever they go after high school. And it makes me think about how neither college nor work expected me to like put my devices somewhere before like engaging in that setting. And so I was curious if you have any thoughts about some of this to help like round out my perspective on it. In terms of this like preparing students for post-grad life, but also being seemingly far more restrictive in high school.
Yeah, I hear that. The policy is not that much more restrictive than we have right now. Students are supposed to just keep it in their backpacks. So actually, students who are doing that are not really seeing a difference too much between that and this. It actually, they've shared with me, wouldn't feel like there would be even any pull or temptation to use it. And so what you're talking about when your brain is a little bit more fully formed is being able to rationalize and not use your phone. But there's that addictive kind of pull, especially with younger students and teenagers. And so we want to develop students and adults into being able to use phones appropriately. Sometimes what we'll see is students being able to use their phones in class, most likely when they're not supposed to, and then kind of leave, use the restroom, have their phones, and now they're not actually engaged responsibly in the class. And they kind of have their cell phone with them. So we want to create habits that are actually rewarding the students who are making the choices to keep their phones away. And we think that being able to put the phone in a designated location is going to help create that habit and then show a benefit for the student to be able to do that on their own. And so we believe that that's kind of where we're at right now in terms of the learning. And I want to acknowledge that we do want to teach our students how to use cell phones reasonably and responsibly. So there's some growth there too. And I cannot agree with everything that Peter said more about the Yonder pouches and trying to have to manage something like that. So I 100% agree. That would be incredible for 1,650 students.
Andrew.
Thanks. I also want to bring up the cell phone cubby policy. And actually, I'm concerned the policy affects consequence before a bad action. Because assuming we have a policy in place currently around the use of cell phones in class, why do we need to demand removal of phones from the control of their owners? I think the act of mandatory placement of phones in this common space at the beginning of each class creates an opportunity for theft or damage or even bullying. It's hard not to imagine taking the wrong phone, dropping someone's phone on the ground, otherwise damaging this property. And when the phones are damaged, who's going to pay for them? If they have to be placed in a cubby at the order of the school and they are damaged, the liability would seem to sit with the school. These are hundreds of dollars per phone. And that's before you think about the damage you're doing to somebody else's property, just the replacement piece. I think that if we have a policy in place that's already stating phones can't be used in class, that apart from approved uses, that policy includes an escalation of consequences. And we can achieve the same result. Someone takes a phone out in class, faculty tells them to put it away. Second time, faculty tells them to put it on their desk. Third time, somebody puts it on your desk. aside from the potential like theft and damage and bullying that can come from this policy, just this consequence though of consequence before bad action is wrong. As Leila was talking about, teaching our students to self-regulate in a world of technology. We don't let them use AI, we let them use Grammarly. We, as a district, will use AI to build our presentations. It's this scale that we won't allow them to do these certain things even though the rest of the world is leaning towards doing all of these things. I think policy works when prohibition fails, and with that in mind, I request a shift, an adjustment, a change, a revision to this policy. I don't think it's going to achieve the greater scale that you want it to achieve.
Do you want me, should I, okay. I think that, so we haven't noticed any like breaking of phones or issues with there being stolen phones, but certainly if that happens, then we would have to re-examine the policy. Many area schools have done this and it has worked well. Unfortunately, and students recognize this as well. Students are using their cell phones and we can't see it or notice it. And they want help stopping. And so teachers aren't able to see it, and when they're out in the halls, we can't monitor that when they're going to the bathroom. And so I think that we're trying to put things in place that students actually are willing to try to. And I hear what everyone is saying in terms of being able to teach students how to reasonably use electronic devices, and I appreciate that. I want that too.
With a short amount of time between classes, and the difference between 4 or 5 people reaching for the cubbies and 20-some people reaching for the cubbies, the opportunity is very easy for mishandling. I just think about, like, we have speed limits on the road, and if you go over the speed limit, you get a ticket. But you don't get a ticket every time you go on the road expecting that you're going to speed. And I think we have to offer that same level of respect. I understand that it can be difficult, but if the understood consequence exists, that is escalated in the same way we escalated for all the other things, like the door propping. And you've shown that the door propping policy worked. I would think to show them the respect, to show them the opportunity for self-regulation, and to again return some of the authority to the teachers to say, no, you can't do that, put that in Joni's office, would allow you to have that measure of control without ceding control of personal property at the beginning of every class, causing additional opportunities for mischief to happen.
I think that is what we're doing this year, though.
Joni, I think we've got this topic covered. Lots of people want to make comments. So I'm going to go to Tori and then Lisa and then Glenn.
So it was interesting to me to read this because it's almost exactly the policy my school put into place this year. And I will tell you as a teacher, it was life-changing.
Yeah.
I no longer have to spend time fighting with kids about putting their cell phone down so we can actually teach. And so I hear what you're saying, Andrew, about a lot of things. I would say the nuance that we had is our policy is a little different depending on age. Our middle schoolers put them in the pouch and they stay there all day. They don't get to touch them unless they go and talk to somebody at the front desk to get access to their phone. Our 9th and 10th graders, they're in the pouch. They are allowed to access them during lunch and breaks. Our juniors and seniors, we do actually allow them to keep them on their person, but if you catch them with them out, they get busted back to middle school level privileges. So there is a little bit of a nuance, but I will tell you that it also took a rollout, very clear discussion about expectations when we started school. We let all the parents know. It was in our student handbook as well. And then getting those things out of their hands for the first week was terrible. And after that, life-changing.
We have teachers who do it for all students right now. And there aren't really that issues in terms of getting the phones,
Lisa?
I just want to take a moment to echo what Tori said. As somebody who has spent an enormous amount of time playing whack-a-mole with the cell phones in the classroom, it is honestly the best way I could describe it, because the exorbitant amount of energy spent on just trying to like referee the technology in the classroom when I might be having Chromebooks open and they're supposed to be doing something else, and then they're on their cell phones, and then somebody's giggling about something on social media, and I'm like, oh my dear goodness. is there potential bullying happening? Are they joking? And it like brings into other issues into the school that could be problematic, especially if there's social media use on the cell phones during class time. That's not, appropriate for the time unless they're like doing, Kahoot or something to do a classroom quiz or something. But that being said, there's a lot of energy that could be better spent as a teacher teaching the class and working with students, and I really applaud this effort.
Yeah, well over 85, close to 85% of our teachers are exceptionally in favor of this. I think it's very hard for them to teach right now with this. All students have Chromebooks in front of them, almost most of the class, so they are getting to use technology in that way.
And the consistency is key too, because as somebody who was a teacher where it's like, you're the only one that does this, like, no, everybody does it, and that's important.
Glenn?
Well, I'm going to shift gears a little bit from the cell phone policy. I think that you mentioned the addictive part. That's the part that I find concerning. I think that generally, like, the less temptation there is in the classroom for that, and not having to have all that referee effort being spent on that, I think is beneficial for learning and in helping kids develop the brain that they need to go out and regulate in the future. So this is tangent to the cell phone regarding social media specifically. Mm-hmm. Peter just mentioned that like guidelines without practical hands-on support, pretty difficult. But I noticed in the handbook there social media itself wasn't explicitly mentioned too much. Would guidelines around platform-specific things be beneficial at all to educators, or would that just sort of be like, okay, great, we have a document, now what? Because there was Snapchat, Instagram, we mentioned how a lot of these, with the social emotional learning, anti-bullying guidelines, they're great, but there's still stuff that, teachers aren't gonna know because A, it happens online, and B, it follows the kids home. Before, years ago, you would get bullied at school and then you'd go home and that was that. But now it can follow you home on Instagram. It can follow you home on Snapchat. So perhaps I'm just gesturing towards a concern I have more than a practical question that I was hoping you could speak to a little bit. Would social media guideline specific, platform specific be beneficial at all to educators, or would that just be like an unhelpful document?
Jody, I'll jump in on that.
I think it would be outdated in a minute.
So, I think it's outdated. I think there are actually states that have talked about, minimum ages for different social media accounts and things like that. Anything like that, what's on a student's cell phone is not what the school can regulate. Because otherwise we're policing individual devices. We just don't have that capacity. I think if the state took something on, that would be between legislation and the social media companies to have to then implement policies around ages and restrictions and things like that. But that aspect of it is probably outside of our scope.
When it impacts the school, then we have to look into it, but we can't really police it, as Peter's saying.
I would like to move on. Glenn, you got one question, so we're gonna move on to our next topic now. If there's no other comments on the handbook, we have the opportunity to write some written feedback, and it would be good to get that to the administration probably by tomorrow, so that they can put some edits in if there's something there that's supportive, and then we'll be voting this at our next meeting in 2 weeks.
By the administration, do we write to Peter?
Peter, yes, please, to Peter directly. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joni. All right, we are moving on to ongoing business. Approval of our Strategic Planning and Reorganization Steering Committee membership. Peter, you want to give us an update on sort of where we've gotten to in the past few weeks with our Strategic Planning and Reorganization Steering Committee? And I will say that I'm very actively trying to remember to say it's not just about reorganization, because the really important work is coming up with our strategic plan.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. So there's some information and memo in your packet, but one of the things that I wanted to do was have a hub for information for members of the community, families, to be able to gather information about the strategic planning process and any reorganization that we're considering as part of that strategic plan. So on the district website, there is now an icon where our FY26 budget information was that directs people to a central location for strategic planning. It's just in its infancy right now, but what I've done is put the timeline of events that have taken place to date, so that people can see with transparency what actually has happened or what hasn't happened, right? I think that's important. I also put in the full text version of the school committee's message to the community, so that there was a consistent messaging around why we're actually undertaking this process. And then I also put in the steering committee's meeting dates, as well as all of the topics that are going to be discussed at each of those meetings. Those meetings are open to the public. Those will be posted meetings. We welcome members of the community to come sit in, whether there are educators, whether they are, families, or just interested members of the community. Certainly follow along with that. But what we wanted to do was really be transparent about what the process looks like and how that's going to unfold. We'll be sending that out tomorrow in the superintendent's update, so families can follow along and staff can follow along with that. Another thing, we've started to work with district management group, and they asked us to identify some people to conduct one-on-one interviews with, or even 1 to 2 interviews with, to just get a handle on what the process should look like and some initial considerations so they can wrap their head around next steps. So, when we last met, the 2 school committee members, I think initially that had been appointed to that were Adam and Tori. I actually rethought about who district management group should talk to, so they soon will be reaching out to all of you to schedule, like 2-person at a time kind of interviews to just understand what you're thinking about as we undertake this process. So just something to look for from them. And we also included, some community organizations like the CPAC to talk to initially, just to, upfront understand some family concerns. We have some administrators in the district. And then, we've been focused a lot on developing the steering committee roster, and one of the things, when we initially filled out the roster, you'll see that it actually has grown to about 18 or 19 people. As I'm thinking about staff communication, and one of the lessons we learned through the elementary budget task force is we need a really strong communication vehicle back to our educators in each of the schools, and particularly our elementary schools have expressed a really strong interest in participating in that. And so I did go back out, and if we had a school that did not yet have an educator identified, we have now identified an educator. So you'll see Blanchard doesn't have one. I do have 2 potential educators now as of right before the meeting, but it's just not going to happen tonight. I do think it's really important to have that. We did get good parent representation across all of our elementary schools. We did not get great representation in terms of the diversity of our community. I want to name that, and something that I've already talked to district management group about how we're going to make sure that we do that. One of the strategies, knowing that they're going to be doing some small group stakeholder interviews in different groups, is I want to use one of the methods we had previously used where people who are interested in being part of a small group interview can apply and we can get them enrolled, but then we're also going to randomly identify individuals across our community and then invite them to participate in a small group interview as well. That worked well on the elementary budget task force, getting people to apply to things. I think one of the things I thought about with this initiative in particular, where we are focused not just on strategic planning, but also the reorganization side, kind of the geography of the committee also meant a lot, in that we really had to make sure we had representation from each school, I think was really important, so that the perspectives across the district were heard in that way. Otherwise, I think we're going to really leave ourselves open to, a lot of feedback that we didn't hear from a certain school or something like that, and then we made decisions based on that, and I think that would be really challenging. It's certainly a limitation of the group that we're presenting to you tonight, that we know it's not representative of the diversity of the community, but we do have some ideas in place to make sure that as we go and we collect feedback, we're going to actually create some metrics around making sure that we get get that representation in the feedback we collect.
Thanks, Peter. And I'll just add, you know, as we reviewed all of the people who submitted interest in supporting the committee, just amazing backgrounds of people, and it's part of the reason why our steering committee grew as well, is because it was a hard choice to really get the right representation and you know, get the input from some of the highly skilled folks in our community who stepped up. So I do want to say a thank you to everyone in the community who did raise their hand to volunteer for this. I hope we'll be using that list to go out as we build our small groups so that everyone does have that opportunity to provide their input.
Yeah, and Adam, just to add to that, and I thank you for reminding me of it, I did reach out to any individuals that were not selected for the committee and offered to hold their names for participation in a small group meeting, so that if they might not be on the steering committee, they will definitely have an opportunity to contribute.
Yeah, and then you'll see in the memo, our first meeting for the steering committee is next Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. It's an open meeting, open to the public. So if anybody in the public is interested in joining, please feel free to come and attend that meeting. And in saying that, I also want to just sort of share with the community that we've not done much as a steering committee because we haven't met yet. So we've been talking a lot about this work of strategic planning and reorganization. This meeting will be sort of our first time meeting as a steering committee, hearing what district management group has done in the interim. So we don't, you know, we know they've had some interviews, but they'll be presenting to us and then mapping out our path for the future. So, you know, I don't want anyone to feel like they've been left out or anything's been sort of done, you know, under the table to date. Not a lot has been done. District management groups getting up to speed. But the meeting next week is sort of our big kickoff for all of the work that we're going to be doing. Please.
You know, also one of the things that I've started thinking about and thinking in my mind about stakeholder mapping and making sure that we have a good communication plan throughout this process with stakeholders. One of the initial communication vehicles, just to share kind of my thinking about the cadence of communication from my office, is after every steering committee meeting, we will take on summarizing that meeting, and probably within, you know, 24 to 48 hours, we'll send out the summary of the meeting to all of our educators, to all of our community members, so that people know what's going on, and that would be a summary of the meeting that just happened, as well as previewing what the upcoming meeting is anticipated to talk about. And then from an internal communication standpoint, I'm also going to be offering a staff Zoom like early the following week, to just do a quick check-in. What questions are there? What do people need to know? I'm working out a rotation with all of our principals of being able to attend staff meetings at each school, so there's an additional opportunities to ask questions throughout the process. And then I'm also anticipating adding parent coffees to that same cadence along the same lines, where we send an update and then a few days later there's a parent coffee that people can, you know, come virtually, show me a picture of their mug online, ask some questions, learn what's going on, and really stay informed. I think the communication coming out of the committee is going to be incredibly important to make sure people are updated about what's going on and they know what's happening transparently. We will share what the communication cadence will be up front, so people know when to anticipate communications from my office, and then we'll just make sure we stick to that.
I feel like we're playing ping pong. So I would add two things. One is this committee here, super important for us to get this information out to all of the folks that we talk to day in and day out. So we're going to be, you know, upfront sharing the information. Please do share that broadly. And then before I turn it over to the committee to ask any questions or make a motion to approve the committee, I just want to point out that if you're having trouble finding the link, not only is it under that picture on the homepage, but you can also go to district, and it's the first item under the district heading. And I only say that because as I've been searching on the internet, and Peter says, yeah, it's there under the compass rose. And I'm like, I don't see any compass rose on my applications. Are different, web browsers are different, but if you go to district, strategic planning, reorganization, right at the top there. I was struggling with that for a while, just so you know. Any questions or comments from the committee?
Thanks for your vulnerability and sharing that you were struggling.
Gladly.
I am appreciating you, Peter, and your kind of forward-thinking approach to communication and engagement. Looking forward to our school committee also putting in the effort to like go places, talk to people. My quick question is around where the L or ML pack falls into this. Appreciating that Amanda Bailey is on the steering committee as a CPAC rep. But that was the one thing that stood out to me.
Yeah, I think probably the biggest challenge in all of that is we still don't have a formal LPAC. You know, we have tried multiple times, but the feedback that we keep getting from our families is going through the process of establishing bylaws and having kind of that formality to it has not been an interest of any individuals to kind of serve in the official capacity. So what we have traditionally done is kind of hold meetings with, you know, we hold regular meetings for our ML families where we will present information, talk with families about their experiences, let them experience some different things that take place in our schools. And that's been of more interest than having a PAC. And so, you know, we certainly want to get to a place where we have an LPAC, but we just don't have a formal one right now to be able to include like an officer of it. One of the things I did think about that I'd like to see us do, and I have yet to talk to district management group about this, so hopefully they're just watching it online and learning about it live. But I'd actually like to set some metrics for, you know, when we collect survey feedback or participation in focus groups around representation of families of students with disabilities, of representation from families whose students receive multilingual services, things like that, and obviously overall representation, just to make sure that we really are connecting with the community that we serve and not just some elements of the community we serve.
Hi, Liz.
I have a quick question, and I know that it may be far-reaching, especially since the first meeting is on Tuesday, but just in thinking of, you know, ways to communicate, especially with the other, you know, demographics that we have in our two communities, or one unified community, two towns. Is there a place, and I'm blanking, because of course I'm thinking in Boxborough, we have the sort of like sandwich board there that they have for announcements that's in front of the church. Do we have something like that that we could put, you know, just have a quick posting, you know, public meeting on, it's not reorganization, but strategic planning. Public strategic planning meeting, you know, on Monday, May, insert date here, that type of thing. Is there some place that there could be just like a line of sight when you're driving on 111 that could catch people's eyes?
Absolutely yes is the answer, and as soon as the Kelly's Corner project is done, we will pull it out of storage and install it wherever we actually have space. No, I mean, that's a joke, obviously, but unfortunately, we had that message board that we could use easily for things like that, but when they started the Kelly's Corner project, they had to take that land to do the project, so we still have the sign, and they actually paid us to remove it ourselves. We didn't hire a contractor for it, we just did it, and they gave us money, and then we're going to reinstall it once the project is over. So it'll probably still be a year or two, I think, probably before we get that sign back in, but that's that. I think one of the things we will do, and we keep on our lists for all of our news items now, are both Boxborough News and the Acton News that goes out as well. And both of those organizations have been absolutely tremendous that when we give them information to publish, they're absolutely getting it out to the community. I think there's an opportunity probably to also go to the senior center and do some outreach in both towns that way to make sure they know what's going on and are informed. So yeah, we're trying to keep track of all of that.
Yanshin.
To answer your question, I was just wondering, can we just print out flyers, like the list of dates, and then post them in like Acton Coffee House and the library bulletin board? I don't know about anywhere in Boxborough, but
we have a library. Hall.
I know, like I said libraries, other than libraries, yeah, like other places, and we're just gonna have to put it where people are going around, hanging around.
I also think if we're doing that, it'll be important to set expectations around what those meetings are, because those really are working group meetings. Those are not public forum workshops. You know, there will be opportunities for public forums and collecting feedback and doing everything else. But what I want to make sure is if we're saying, like, look, we have meetings that are open to the public, some members think that that means, oh, it's a public workshop where I get to go participate and do everything else. And you know, that like it's similar to a school committee meeting. There's times during the year where you actually hold a hearing on something, like you have a budget hearing, you have a school choice hearing, where it's very specific to that meeting for the sole purpose of collecting feedback. that you can consider. Whereas your other meetings, people can come and attend, and oftentimes you have a public comment period, but it's not like public dialogue back and forth throughout the meeting. So I think it's just good to set expectations as well early about what the meetings look like.
Clint.
So I just want to offer to this committee that I really do think that Facebook is going to play a pretty, I feel it should play a role in just getting the word out about what the steering committee decides. The Acton Parents Facebook group in particular has, I think, nearly 5,000 members. Not totally sure how many of them are in Acton, but 7,000? Okay, quite a lot. And obviously, social media is its own dumpster fire in many ways. I also think that it's where the eyeballs are right now. And I think that being able to navigate that space, like, I think it's, if we've mentioned signs, we mentioned cafes, we mentioned libraries, I really do think social media has to be part of this equation. I wouldn't recommend it for like, let's have a discussion about deliberating and this and that, like on the Facebook group, no, but just for like, I think there are parallels to public health messaging, honestly. So I just want to voice this, saying that I really do feel that it should play a role. I think that short videos in particular would be effective in being able to say that, for instance, like, hey, we've decided X. Now let's tell everyone we've decided X. There are ways to do that. I do have an area of expertise in this. I'm happy to talk offline with people about this, but I voice this. I really do think social media has to be a part of the communication strategy with the wider community. It's too big, it's too important, I feel it's too important to ignore. So that's my thought.
Thank you. Vikram.
I have to say I concur with Glenn over there on the Facebook thing. I'm curious, why have we not done that to date, or why hasn't that been a larger part?
I don't think we have the time or the energy this evening to go into that. We've dabbled in social media in the past, particularly during the pandemic, and in the past the chair has engaged quite deeply. Other chairs, I would say, have engaged quite deeply. It can be challenging, and we've also tried as a committee to look at what our social media policy would be, or procedures would be for us as a committee. It's a difficult topic that we haven't been able to crack that nut just yet. Can you turn your mic on?
Is there a sense that perhaps we could open the door a little bit on this particular topic?
I mean, I think what we're hearing is there's some feedback on that, and particularly around this topic. So I think best bet is for us to take this, Peter and I, to discuss it a bit, and then particularly with the steering committee to see what there's an opportunity there, and then the committee as a whole.
I can give a short answer that we would post our updates to the district Facebook page, because we do have a district Facebook page, and then we also have an Instagram account. Those are our two primary social media sources that we use, and two probably that get most of the parents based on generation trends. LinkedIn is also a good source for some people. And then what I would say is, we don't post anything to closed groups, like Acton Parents Facebook group is a closed group. There are people in the community who don't get that, so we don't do that. However, when we post to a public page of our own, people can then send that message and repost and do things like that. So,
Leela.
Can I move to establish the Strategic Planning and Reorganization Steering Committee and to appoint the individuals recommended below to serve as members of the subcommittee?
Second.
All right, so that was Leela with the motion. Thank you very much. And Vikram with the second. Thank you as well. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That's unanimous. Thank you. All right, we're moving on to subcommittee and member reports. We're going to do a quick policy subcommittee update, and we might as well just roll in the second read at the same time, and then if any other members have anything super pressing that they want to add, I just want to remind everybody that we still have to go through our reorganization meeting, which can take some time as well. But I'll hand it over to you now, Liz.
Yes, we did meet last Friday and discussed, updated, and have brought forth to you a second read of the policy JQA.
Andrew, anything you want to add to that?
And scene.
Yeah, so transitioning to the actual second read of the financial assistance policy, as you recall in our last meeting, we brought it for a first read, and we received some written feedback, mostly from Adam, thank you, and during our meeting we incorporated some of those comments, which were appreciated. Some were just about sort of being clear about sort of the scope and purpose of certain statements and organizing it in certain ways. We also did include a substantive change where we wanted to make clear that the athletic fee cap, the family cap, would also be adjusted according to sort of the eligibility in terms of if you receive, 50% or 75% reduction, the family cap would be adjusted accordingly. So we thought we wanted to make that more explicit, but that was the only changes there. The one thing I do want to add is you may have read some feedback from John Peterson just about readability, which is well taken. What I would posit to all of you is I think the readability piece is most important in my mind for the sort of the procedures and the language that is helping families access the process. And so what I would say is I do think policy language, agreed, should be as readable as possible, and yet because it's policy, it also has to withstand scrutiny from a variety of different lenses, some legal, some otherwise, so that may not always be available in terms of vernacular language or simplified language. However, the website that we're planning for the financial assistance application form, that is very fair feedback and expectation around making it user-friendly, making it as accessible as possible. So that feedback I take in terms of those materials that we would move forward with if and when this policy is approved, and just to reassure that piece of feedback was received with the intent that I think it was sent with. So with that, happy to answer any questions, and then hopefully we can move forward.
Thanks, Andrew. Any other comments, questions? Andrew said quite eloquently what I was going to respond to about readability. I think there's a challenge to balance specificity between readability, but we know John likes us to be readable. I would just challenge him to scan some of his own emails for readability, which he might have done in the past.
He's not here to defend.
Leela, did you have a comment? Or your mic's just left on, so would you like to make a motion?
I can. And I had a comment.
Oh.
Next year, it would be helpful if there's any noticeable fiscal impact of this policy to hear some of that feedback. But I can move to approve JQA.
Second.
Tori. Thank you. So that was a motion by Leela to approve policy JQA, seconded by Tori. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That's unanimous. Thank you. So quickly around the table, if anyone has an update from a subcommittee or a liaisonship that they would like to share, starting with Tori, Andrew, Leela. Yeah. We're going to go to community goal update in just a second. So why don't we save that comment for that? It's on there. Item D. Okay. I'll share that we had the joint PTSO meeting this week. Great feedback from all of the PTSOs around a lot of their end-of-year closing activities. Again, another call out, please, if you can volunteer for the project graduation. It's an excellent program. And we will have one more joint PTSO meeting the last week of school. From budget, we have basically canceled our meetings for the rest of the year. There will be obviously some budget topics that will come, but they're really for the committee as a whole, which we'll see at our next meeting. And yeah, Boxborough had a three full night town meeting, lots of topics discussed, and I'll leave it at that. Liz? Good. Anshin? Anybody else? All right. So now we're on to school committee communication goal update. Leela, did you have a communication topic you wanted to bring up?
You can almost read my mind. Yeah, I just wanted to let folks know. So I contextually was in a communications cohort for local electeds, and one of the things that the staff had said was one of the most helpful things that you all can do as local electeds is the ability to convene folks. Let me stop there. And I know that there has been an interest from folks around, like, what do I do when there might be federal agents in our communities? How can we keep our community members safe? And so not as the school committee, I just want to be clear for anyone watching at home, but myself and a couple members of the select board are hosting kind of an information session on Sunday with some information from LUCE, which is the statewide hotline that has come together to protect our community members, and some kind of next steps. It will be at Acton Town Hall this Sunday, 6 to 7:30 in room 204. Feel free to email me if you have questions. I think that's it.
Thank you, and thank you for taking the leadership on that letter. I was happy and proud to be able to sign on to it. Other comments? Liz?
We will have a booth at Pfeiffer's Day, which is going to be Saturday, June 21st. I'm going to put together a Google spreadsheet to see if there's anybody that can come and set up that booth. I'll be there all day, but just to let you guys know, I'm hoping to have some materials, information, and whatnot, particularly about the strategic planning, as that's going to be our big ticket item for the year.
Thank you. Yanshin?
The Memorial Day parade is on Monday. I think the parade kicks off, I know the parade kicks off at the high school at 10 a.m. I'm just curious, are any of us going to be there? Because I plan to be. I'll see you there.
I'll be at the Boxborough Memorial Day Parade, which starts earlier at 8:30.
That's early.
If anyone is interested in walking the parade, it's lots of fun. And you would meet before 10 o'clock at the high school by the baseball field.
Okay, I have a couple quick updates. First is one that came in actually during our meeting. So again, positive results of our community advocacy. We're hearing now that the Senate has unanimously adopted Senator Lewis's redraft amendment number 665, which establishes a Chapter 70 study committee. So we're very happy to hear that. Not 100% done yet. This is the Senate vote, still needs to get reconciled and needs to get voted by everybody, but another step forward, and thank you to everyone for your advocacy there. Next, lots of reminders. Our next meeting, June 5th, is our meeting where we are celebrating our district retirees. So we will have a reception here in the lobby at 6 p.m. And then our meeting will get called to order 15 minutes early at 6:45. And that's so that we can hear some wonderful stories about the retiring staff members. Reminder that the superintendent's evaluation is due tomorrow. Please do your best to get it to me. I recognize that it's a holiday weekend, and either you will have nothing to do or you'll be quite busy. I'll be doing both. So please try to get those to me as soon as possible. Tomorrow would be wonderful. And then finally, a discussion I do want to have with the committee around a late spring, end of school year workshop. So I've sent a message out a couple times to folks looking for some feedback around whether or not they're looking for some feedback on availability. The point of the workshop was really to sort of close out the year, and particularly with our new members, just do some team building activities. And I think even with our existing members, have a chance to reset after what has been a difficult year, particularly around budget. Unfortunately, I have not gotten feedback from everybody, and I have not found a consistent date where everyone is available. So 2 questions. Is this something that the rest of the committee feels would be good to have? And secondly, are we okay if a couple members are not able to attend? Leela, and then Vikram, and then Lisa.
Just wondering if a hybrid meeting would allow more members to attend. I don't know, just tossing it out there as a question.
Potentially. I think it depends on where they are if they're unavailable. If they're hiking in the middle of a mountain somewhere, probably not possible. Lisa?
Oh, obviously I'm for this, and I thank you so much for trying to put this together. I do really appreciate that effort. And yes, it's okay, but and even if myself, if it works for the majority.
Okay. Tori?
I'm wondering if, depending on what you're thinking about here, I'm wondering if it makes sense to try and do something August, September-ish instead, if that gets more of us?
Yeah, it's a good point. We're already planning some sort of early September workshop, and the plan for that was to focus more on a summary of what's happened on the strategic planning and reorganization process. So we'll come back into the school year and sort of dive into that work. And really, what my gut was telling me was we need sort of a decompress from this year. So it was more about team building as it was about sort of like a business-related workshop. Other thoughts? Vikram?
I was going to say that I do think that we should have it, and I think it's okay if a few people can't make it. I think it's important that, pardon the phrase, the newbies are there. And I'd like to do 22nd, but I can't because it's basically a rain date for my son's birthday party. So it's a possibility, but I didn't want to say anything at all about that date that you added in.
Okay. So it sounds like there's some interest in moving forward with this. So my plea is, in addition to getting me your superintendent evaluations, that's item number 1 on your priority list. Item number 2 is, if you have not responded to the doodle poll, please do so that we can see. There is one time slot that is showing up as the one where most folks are available. Unfortunately, someone will be hiking in the woods somewhere. Running in Italy, which sounds far more exciting than hiking in the woods. The woods of Italy. There you go. So if possible, please, if you've not replied to that, do send me, do answer the doodle poll. I've sent you a couple reminders on that. That's all of the updates I have for the committee. That means that I get to hand the gavel over to Peter. And we go into our reorganization process. Do you have a calculating spreadsheet? He's prepared.
And I'm just going to go on the hope that I can do this without needing a gavel. But that's more your responsibility than mine. But the gavel's within reach, just in case. So I included in your packet the policies and procedures around reorganization because it's a pretty prescribed process. So my only role at this point is to get you through the point of selecting the chair. And then at that point, I will turn it back to Adam as the current chair to run the rest of this process. Does that make sense? And so the way this works, there's a few different steps. The first is getting nominations for the chair, and then there's a voting process to that. And so what I'm going to do initially is open the floor for nominations for the position of chairperson for FY26. You can nominate someone else, you can nominate yourself, and there is no second needed at this stage of the process. Once we have nominations for the position of chair, we will vote to close the nominations for that position. Clear on that? Questions first?
Do you have to nominate the seating chair?
You can nominate anyone who is elected to the committee.
But I mean, like, does the seated chair have to be nominated as well?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
No. Yeah. Well, no, excuse me. If someone wanted to consider the seated chair, they would need to nominate them. They're not by default nominated, but you don't need to nominate the current chair to continue.
So maybe your question is what happens after the vote happens?
No, my question is in terms of nomination, does somebody have to nominate you specifically? Yeah. So right now it's sort of like an open seating.
There's no
You're
chair.
like the de facto and then, okay.
I'm in.
Okay, all right, I got it. All right,
don't
now,
want that.
Now I see it. The visual thing, that helped me. Thank you.
You need to pick the next person. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that the other point is that the vote for chair and vice chairs don't become active until August 1st. So the current slate of leadership continues on until sort of the August timeframe, and then we hand off.
All right, so nominations are open. Vikram, and then Yangshan, and then Liz. Oh.
Are you allowed to nominate more than one person? As an individual?
Yeah, you can nominate whoever you'd like. Yeah, there's no restriction to nominations in the policy.
To numbers of nominations that I make?
Correct.
So in theory, I could nominate everybody?
Yeah, but
Not that
remember
would.
I have this gavel.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. It's the only time of year, Vikram, I get to. So, absolutely. So yes, you can nominate anyone.
With that being said, I'd like to nominate both Adam and Tori.
I want to nominate Tori as the chairperson for ABRSC.
I would like to nominate Adam as the chairperson for ABRSC.
Okay, so once someone's already nominated, there's no additional, like, well, they're nominated, they're in, they're on the
Second.
ballot. Yeah, no, there's no seconds. Sorry, Liz. Yeah. Are there any additional nominations? So I have 2 nominations, Adam, Tori, going once, going twice. All right, so if there are no additional nominations, I would entertain a motion to close the nominations for chair of the school committee.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right.
Do we want to explicitly name who moved and seconded for Beth?
Yes, so I made the motion to close nominations, and Ben seconded.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Leela. Ben, and Leela reminded us to name the people.
Yeah, good job.
Add that to the notes.
All right, so we have 2 nominations for chair. We have Adam and Tori. First, I just want to ask, each of you, are you interested in accepting the nomination? Yes? Yes. And yes, okay. So what I'd like to do is give you each a chance. I want to make sure I'm doing this. Each nominee is given a chance to speak, and then members may speak. So, Tori, why don't I give you the first opportunity to speak?
So, thank you to Vikram and Yenshin. I think what I appreciate the most about this group is that we all come in here believing that what is most important is the best education for our students, the best environment for our educators, and the best system for our community. And that doesn't just mean having absolutely the best district, which is obviously what we all want, but it also means that it has to be affordable for our communities. And we're all feeling what that feels like. Something I really appreciate is that we all bring a lot of different perspectives to all of our conversations, a lot of different experiences, a lot of different skills. And we don't always agree on everything, and that's a good thing. I walk out of every interaction a little bit wiser, with a little bit broader perspective and a deeper understanding because of the conversations that we all have. When we all come together and we bring our best to the group and we speak with one voice, it is incredibly powerful. I think about town meeting and where we started with a bunch of pieces of paper and a lot of words on them, and some of us might have used AI, and some of us might have composed a song, and a lot of us went old school, but where we brought that to as a group was really cool. And I think that is the part that resonated with people the most from town meeting. Clearly, we have some more work to do on the rest of it, and it's going to be a challenging year. We've got negotiations. We have strategic planning and reorganization. We have to do everything that we normally do as a school committee. So that's a lot, but this is a group that is really tight. We have 2 new great additions, and I think what is really going to be important going forward is how we work together to make that happen. So yeah, I would like to be a part of that.
Thank you, Liz and Vikram. I'm excited to see how Vikram votes, considering he nominated both of us. But I'm honored to be considered again for the role. Serving the role of chair this past year has been both challenging and deeply rewarding. I've appreciated the opportunity to help guide the committee through meaningful discussions and important decisions. I am especially proud of our collective advocacy with our state leaders for the additional funding. It's a clear example of how we can work together and make a difference for our students in our schools. You know, what motivates me to continue is a deep commitment to our students and the outstanding staff who support them every day, and a strong belief in the importance of our governance role. I strive to lead with openness and consistency, hoping that all voices get heard while keeping our work focused and productive. Looking ahead, I'm excited about supporting strategic planning and reorganization. We may need a shorter name for that because it's about a mouthful to say every time. But my goal is to ensure with that process that we listen well, we engage broadly, and we balance the needs of both the communities and our students. I know this role doesn't come with easy answers, and I won't get everything right. But I hope it's clear that I do like to lead with fairness, integrity, and focus on thoughtful and inclusive decision-making. If chosen to continue this role, I'll remain committed to setting high expectations for how we do our work together, and especially as we take on another year of significant work through our long-term planning. So thank you again for the opportunity and the trust.
Okay, so now that they've had an opportunity to speak, we do open the floor for any other member of the committee who'd like to speak to either of the nominations. And the language is members may speak in support of a candidate as well. So Yangshan, were you first? Yeah.
I really appreciate, Adam, your leadership for the past 2 years when I was a newbie and a newish member. The reason why I nominate Tori is not only because I have seen her for the past 2 years. She's always there for the committee. She's always there for the community. I will say I don't love every single minute that we spend together, but I think that you are a person who can accept constructive feedback very well. I think you think deeply. I think you will be a very good person to lead this committee for the next year. The other reason why I nominate you is because I think as a committee, we have to think broader than just the good leadership we have right now. Looking to the future, like, I don't think any of us can guarantee we'll be here for the next 5, 10, 15 years. I think it is really important for our committee to have a healthy succession plan. And that's my reasons.
Liz?
I would like to start by saying that either of you would be an excellent chair for the next coming year. That being said, the reason that I did nominate Adam is because, especially with all that we have going on that we are anticipating for this next year, I think that time and expertise are going to be big needs that we will have from the helm. And I know that you would do an absolutely fabulous job. I do know that Adam understands deeply, the time commitment and, what needs to happen chronologically. With that being said, if you were to not be the chair for next year, I would definitely love for you to be in the seat of vice chair.
Glenn?
So I want to echo that either of you would be an excellent chair. Both of you have demonstrated excellent leadership. I will be supporting Tori. I think Tori has demonstrated impeccable integrity, a mountain of character, coolness and composure under pressure, an unwavering commitment to public service, and a deep well of kindness, compassion, and expertise. I think she has the strength, commitment, and resolve to help lead us this charge through these difficult times. And 2 master's degrees in education from Harvard certainly doesn't hurt either. And I would follow her into some pretty deep trenches.
Vikram?
I would say Adam, I think you've been absolute fantastic chair. I know the amount of work that it takes to do all this, and you've just done a stellar job, no question about it. But I do feel in working with Tori that she also displays sort of exemplary attention to detail and subtle nuances and things. Not you that you don't, but I also feel that as a committee, I think it's good to shift the chair, and so I think I will be supporting Tori.
Does anyone else wish to speak to one of the candidates? Not to them, but to support the process.
I just have a quick question as a newbie. Sorry. How many times in a row have you served as chair? And Tori, have you served as chair before? Sorry. So back, whoever's first.
I have not served as chair of this committee.
This is my second year in a row and third time total.
Thank you.
I don't see anyone else. So what I would like to do is we're going to do a roll call vote. So the way the procedure works is I silence myself first. No, the way this works, it's a roll call vote, and each member, we will go around the room. I'll actually start with Lisa and then work our way around the table this way. You vote for one of the two candidates. I will record that vote. It is a weighted vote of the school committee, and so I actually want to make sure we're only missing Lakshmi, correct? Let me... Yeah, I just want to get that recorded first. So the reason that I wanted to do that, so Acton members have a weight of 2.5 per vote. Boxborough members, the weight is 1, and that is not my decision, just to be very, very clear. That is per the regional agreement. I very much value my time here, so I want to be clear about the decision-making process. So without Lakshmi here, though, the weighted votes are 20.5, and so the majority of that is actually 10 1/4. All right, so, you know, which is not particularly helpful, but probably 10 1/2 would be to get a majority. And because we have the 0.5 votes, that's a reasonable assumption. All right, any questions on that?
Can I go last?
Can I say something about that? Going last can actually be really painful.
Okay, never mind.
Yeah, because there's the pressure on being the tiebreaker. So, all right. So, Lisa, do you want to go first or?
Sure.
Okay. All right. So, Lisa. And I can come back around if you want.
Please come back around. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
Vikram, do you know?
Tori.
Adam.
Oh, so hold on one second, Ben, because I'm recording these as we go.
Adam.
Okay, Yangshin,
Tori.
Liz,
Adam.
Adam,
Me.
Leela,
Tori.
Andrew,
Adam.
Tori,
I'll vote for myself this year.
Glenn,
Tori.
Adam. Sorry.
All right. So what I have right now for weighted votes, I have Adam at 9.5 weighted votes and Tori at 11. So based on that, Tori, congratulations, you would be elected chair. All right. So the roll starts August 1st, just to be clear.
Can I say one more thing?
Yes.
Really, the only reason I felt comfortable doing this is because, Adam, I know you're not going anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going a couple chairs to the left or right now. Oh, so then I guess it comes back to me now to open nominations. Tori, you want to try this? Use your, no. Okay, so I will, thank you. I will first nominate Peter to record the votes for vice chair. I will open the floor.
Can I make a point of order?
Please.
If, Adam, you think you might accept a nomination for any other position, you should not take the gavel.
Yes, so there's an interesting point. So, yeah, I am going to defer this work back to Peter in case I should be nominated as vice chair. Here you go.
All right, so what I will do is open the floor for vice chair.
Are we going to do one town at a time?
What's that?
Are we going to do one town at a time?
Yeah,
or
excuse me,
just-
vice chair from Acton.
Okay.
We will start with. Yes, 2 vice chairs. Yeah. 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 All right, Tori?
I'd like to nominate Leela.
I don't think there's, just to be clear, I'm looking at our policy, I don't think there's anything in our policy that says it has to be an Acton member to nominate a vice chair from Acton, because I saw your hand up, so I just wanted to.
That was going to be my next question.
Yeah, I don't believe there's anything in our policy that restricts who nominates from each community.
Oh.
Okay, Vikram?
I nominate both Leela and Liz.
Well, only Acton right now.
Oh,
They have to be a resident of
Sorry.
Acton to be the vice chair from
Then Leela, yes, that's
Yeah. Anyone else?
I move to close nominations.
Thank you.
I made the motion and Tori seconded that.
All right, Leela, do you want to accept the nomination? I hope so.
Well, seeing as there's a plethora of candidates, and David might be making another point of order.
Sorry, you didn't vote on closing nominations.
Thank you, David.
He's out of practice.
Yeah, I don't do this very often, David, thank you. All right, so we have a motion. Did we get a second? Second. All right, Adam made the motion.
It was Tori who seconded it.
You already seconded, Tori seconded. All in favor of closing nominations? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstention? No, great, thank you. Okay, so, Leela, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, as I was saying, seeing as there's a plethora of candidates, I'm happy to accept. I appreciate that.
All right, so Liz knows what this feels like, right? Running unopposed?
Yeah, a little bit.
But we will just, the process actually is still a roll call vote. Does anyone want to speak to Leela's candidacy before we call a vote?
I do. I think Leela's going to do a wonderful job. I think you're a strong advocate for many people in our community, and I think you represent our community as a whole excellently, and I'm excited to see how you step up in this role and balance it with your own professional life, because I know that can be challenging sometimes. But I believe in you.
There are a few people I know who can both have the passion you have for the world around you and the snark you have to deal with. And I really appreciate that. I think you're going to be fabulous in this, and my condolences that you get the part.
Tori?
Leela, I have really learned so much from you in the past, how many months have we been working on advocacy? It hasn't been all that long, but you have some tremendous skills, and we need that. So thank you for being willing to do this.
Vikram?
I just want to say, I really admire your quiet strength and your strong advocacy for those who really, really need it.
All right, I don't see anyone else, so we will do a roll call vote. We will go around. Lisa, I am going to start with you this time.
This is really tough.
All right,
definitely.
Lisa.
Yes, Leela.
Vikram?
Leela.
Ben?
Leela.
Yangshin?
Leela.
Liz?
Leela.
Adam?
Leela.
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 Andrew.
Leela.
Lakshmi is not here. Tori.
Leela.
And Glenn.
Leela.
All right, and let me tabulate this.
Yay.
Congratulations, Leela.
20 and a half votes. You
All
beat
right.
Tori in the vote count, just saying.
So we are now on to nominations for Boxborough. So the floor is open for nominations for position of vice chair from Boxborough.
I nominate Adam Klein.
Okay, any other nominations?
I nominate Liz.
Any other nominations?
I move to close nominations.
Okay, we have a motion by Adam, a second by Vikram. All in favor of closing nominations for vice chair from Boxborough? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, very good. David, did I get it? Nice. That was unanimous, sure. Liz, I'll start with you this time, and then I'll let Adam talk.
Thank you very much for the nomination. I'm looking forward to sitting on that side of the table. So I will respectfully decline being chair for this year. Vice chair. Oh, God, chair.
So if I decline being vice chair, then, no, I'm just kidding. Thank you for the nomination. I'm happy to sit next to Tori and support her in her continuing education of running a school committee meeting. It would be my pleasure to continue to serve.
Would anyone like to speak after? At this point, Liz is withdrawn, so it's really just speaking to Adam's candidacy.
So I'm expecting elbows and kicks under the table, but no, seriously, I think something I have really appreciated is watching you lead and model what this can look like and how well you listen and can answer questions when it gets confusing from this end of the table about what's going on. And I really value your perspective, and I really look forward to continuing to have you as my teammate. So keep me straight.
Leela?
I just wanted to say, off the cuff, that I really appreciate how many years you have decided to wrangle a group of adults, and done it really thoughtfully, and I think I've seen times where I know I'm pushing you, and you've just like received it, and I've really appreciated that, and I am looking forward to keep continuing working with you, so thanks.
Thank you.
Vikram?
Adam, I just want to say that I think you have been an absolutely amazing chair, and the amount of work that you do for all this stuff is, you know, we all know it, we all see it, and I especially know and deeply respect the amount of work that you've been putting in, you know, and I know you're going to continue doing it anyway. So, with that being said.
Anyone else? All right, we will do a roll call vote. Lisa, you're going to start us off again.
Adam.
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 Blank, I mean Adam.
I was going to say blank. Adam.
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 All right, and Adam, I'm not going to bother tabulating from you. It appears you have it.
Thank you. And I hold it as a badge of honor that for every elected position I've ever applied for, I've always run unopposed. So
Well, for your next,
thank you for allowing me to continue that.
For your next campaign, you can use this round of Adams as your like the
My
jingle
video.
in the background.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Let me just catch my place here. So we need to appoint, or vote actually, a vote to appoint a new secretary and a treasurer. As we mentioned earlier, Beth Petter is retired as our school committee secretary. You'll see in your packet there is included in both the policy language around school committee organization, but additionally there's a job description of the duties that the secretary to the school committee provides. You'll see that's a fairly extensive list of tasks, and I think it was important to highlight that because the person who will be serving in this role will have a great deal of work to do to support us, and we're very grateful for her support. That being said, is there a motion to appoint Julie Lalumiere as the secretary of the school committee for the 25-26 school year?
So moved with
Second.
gratitude. Yeah.
So Leela motioned with gratitude, and then a cacophony of members. And I would love to have a nameplate that just says cacophony. We'll give it to Ben on this side over here, made the second on that. We don't have to do this as a roll call vote, so all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That is unanimous. Thank you, Julie, because I know you're still probably watching right now. We appreciate all the work that you're doing to support us. Secondly, we have to vote our ABRSC treasurer. Stephanie Krantz has been serving as our treasurer, doing a wonderful job with that. And so I would look to see if there's a motion to re-elect Stephanie Krantz as the district treasurer.
Second.
For the 25-26 school year. I got to get through the motion first.
So moved.
Second.
Was that, were you with?
Moving.
All right,
Yes,
that was
so
moving?
moved,
All right,
yes.
so Andrew
Very
made the motion and Vikram made the second. I can't even catch who says it because I'm still looking at the words. So Andrew.
Recognize our voices by now.
No. Cacophony. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Also unanimous. Getting to the hour with which we become less productive. We are now at our consent agenda. Huh?
I said, okay, Ginny.
I look forward to serving in that capacity in the coming year. Items on our consent agenda don't usually require discussion and are approved with one vote unless any member would like to hold an item for discussion and a separate vote. I'll read each item. If you want it held, you say hold. You don't have to have attended a meeting to vote on the minutes. Item A, approval of ABRSC meeting minutes of 5/8/2025. And item B, approval of warrants as presented in the packet, 5/22/25. Seeing as none were held, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
Ben made the motion, Leela made the second. Thank you very much. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? No. FYIs, there are a couple things I need you to take a look at since we were talking about checking your schedules. We have put our school committee meeting dates in the calendar. They are in the FYI here. Please take a look at those. Actually, I think you all, a couple days ago, got inundated with calendar invites from Julie. Please make sure you copy those over to your personal calendars as well, which is something that I needed to do. So all of those dates are in there, and it will be up to Tori to make sure that you're actually in attendance. And I do want to highlight, and I apologize, I did not do this at the beginning of the meeting when we returned to open session, but I just do want to highlight that in our executive session today, we did vote a very long list of meeting minutes. We were a bit out of compliance with regards to voting minutes on time, and so we will endeavor to do better. This was some housekeeping, but coming into next year, we will be far more efficient in voting our executive session meeting minutes. With that,
Moved.
was there anything else in the FYI besides
Yeah, there's
calendar?
few important things.
Please.
Fall open house dates are in the FYI. I do want to point out the McT date actually is incorrect in your packet. We ended up moving the McT date because it conflicted with one of the steering committee meetings, and we thought it was important not to exclude people who would want to be at those. And then, actually, Kirsten Nelson did a really nice job of putting together a summary of food services work. I would highly encourage you to take a look at that, and feel free to share that with members of the community who might want to know all the great work that goes on.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
That was Leela and Ben, quite audible. Thank you very much. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you. We are adjourned.